9 FM, your morning of impact. Sam Marshall shares uplifting stories and conversations with people making Johannesburg and the world a better place.
So we continue with these conversations, and we're talking about the realities of South Africa's classrooms, from overcrowding to supporting neurodiverse learners. We talk about how we can build more inclusive schools through partnerships and innovation. Joining me now on the line is Naledi Mokoena, who's the educational psychologist and lead psychologist at Leeto, and she'll be talking and she'll be speaking at the Neurodiversity Parenting Workshop hosted by babyyumyum.com, and that of course is in partnership with the hosted partners including Old Mutual and the Neuroversed, amongst others. It'll happen on September the 13th at the forum at the campus in Johannesburg. Naledi, good morning and thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Sam. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, let's talk about this very, very interesting conversation. Before we go there, talk to me a little bit about your organization, Leeto.
Oh, okay. Can I assist you with the pronunciation?
Yes.
I don't blame you for pronouncing it like that. It's actually Leeto.
Leeto, okay.
Leeto, correct, yeah. So the word is a Tswana word, which basically translates to a journey. We're a child development center. We're based in Johannesburg, and what we do is we're psychologists, and we focus on child development from the very young age of 4 years old, including youth, so up to 35 years old. So basically, we assist people with developmental difficulties or navigating life journeys emotionally, whether it's related to learning difficulties. But we're psychologists and we offer support at a developmental level, essentially.
I'm going to ask you, if you can, Naledi, just to move around a little bit for me. We seem to be dipping in quality. So if you can, just try and find for us maybe a better spot if you can. We'll try and work our way through it. Okay, so I can only imagine that this conversation is such an important conversation to have. And for us non-experts, for us laymen, why do we need to have these conversations around what the realities of the South African classroom looks like? We obviously have all heard of overcrowding. Some of us get a fair sense of what an overcrowded classroom looks like. But more importantly, also in the back of that is the support that we need to provide for neurodiverse learners. So there's a lot to talk about and so many challenges.
Yes, absolutely. And I do have relief that over the past years there has been more talk about this, and there's slightly more awareness, but we definitely need much more because many people and the country in general, we need support around in terms of these difficulties. Why it's important for everybody to really speak about this is because most of us, if not all of us, have somebody around us who is in some type of educational context, right? Whether it be someone in a grade R level or even at university level. And it's important to talk about this because the classrooms at the moment predominantly cater to mainstream type of learners, which are the majority of people. In other words, basically people who can go into a classroom, hear what's being taught, and be able to understand it in a large classroom context. Right, but lots of us, more than we actually would believe, do need specialized type of teaching. And when you're sitting in a classroom with 40 other children, 35 other children, it's quite difficult to be able to actually take in what's being taught. Even if you're sitting there, your mind is actually not digesting the information adequately. So you do find that I have people who come into the practice, and when we do assessments for how they're doing academically, you'll have a child who's at a grade 7 level, but in terms of his actual educational level, the person could still be at a grade 2 or grade 3 level, right? And essentially we try to think about where do those gaps come from, and you do find it quite often. So we have to think about how to mitigate against that and how to bridge the gaps so that educators, parents, caregivers, even siblings have a better idea on how to support those around them, as well as the education system in general.
Naledi, with so many potential gaps that, we can debate at length who is responsible for those and who should be making sure that these gaps in the education system, if not completely eroded, that at least they get smaller over time. But what, just from your, as a specialist, as a leader, what would you prioritize, or if you had to, if for the lack of a silly question, but if you had to prioritize those gaps, where do you think the biggest gaps are?
You mean gaps in terms of the educational system?
Yeah, well, gaps between the education system, the education mandate, and the specialized needs of learners.
Infrastructure basically is what it's about, because in the same way that South Africa has a very great constitution, we actually also have great policies that have been written around what's required in terms of trying to accommodate all types of learners, even in a mainstream classroom. So if anyone has heard of the concept of inclusion, it's basically about saying that even if you walk into a mainstream classroom, if you have a child who walks into that classroom with a diverse type of learning need, the school system should still be able to accommodate for them, right? Whether it means physical disability, whether it's an intellectual disability or learning type of difficulty. So the policies are there. However, the biggest gap really is about where the infrastructure can actually meet the policy. And what I mean by infrastructure is I mean the actual buildings that are there, and do they really accommodate for people with physical disabilities? I also mean the way in which teachers are being trained. Do they have the skills? But even beyond their skills, the classrooms have so many children inside of them, particularly at a public school level. And therefore, does the teacher have the capacity to be accommodating 45 children who, let's say, 5% of those kids in the classroom have diverse needs that need to be accommodated for?
What do you think? I want to get to your presentation at the workshop and what you're going to be focusing on. But just to kind of go down this path a little bit longer, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about people that are neurodiverse that I think is important to clear up as well?
The misconception is that these people are not normal, right? And the misconception is also that there's something wrong with the person, and therefore the biggest thing we need to do is kind of change the person in order to be able to accommodate for them being able to be included in society. However, it should be that. I try to avoid using the word normal, although I understand that it's often used within layman's language. But it's rather understanding that a person who is going along their life journey, their brain could be wired in a particular way, even all the way from birth. Physically may be the case, or they may also come from a social environment that causes them to emotionally also respond differently to situations compared to what you expect them to. So we have to be quite cognizant about where people are coming from, and therefore think about how the environment can therefore accommodate for those diverse needs. And I'm saying it quite simply, but I do know it is quite challenging. But I think the biggest thing really is about having the mindset to think about where to start in terms of accommodating a person's diverse needs. Because the more we're able to do so, in the same way as like disability policies, then the more people within our society are actually able to contribute actively within the classroom environment, with their peers, and eventually one day with the intention of allowing as many people as possible to become independent individuals in the world.
Yeah, I love that. But to your point, it's going to take a collaborative effort. We're going to need to clearly identify the role of each of the stakeholders. And a workshop and a conversation like this is definitely, I mean, not to say it's the only one, but it's definitely the more dialogue we have, the more conversations we have, the more we understand what the requirements are, where the gaps are, what processes, what potential legislative mandates need to be put in place, we can become more inclusive, right?
Absolutely, 100% on the mark, yeah.
Talk to me about your presentation, because you will be speaking at the workshop. What are you focusing on?
Okay, so I'm one of a few experts. So I'm the educational psychologist there, which means that my presentation on Saturday particularly will be exactly around these conversations, thinking about how parents can be empowered to be able to work with children or individuals within the schooling system in order to accommodate any individual with a diverse learning need, and how the parents can actually use the skills that they learn from the workshop and those they get from day-to-day living in order to be able to give those individuals the best learning opportunity as possible.
Is it a fair thing to say, Naledi, that or as a parent myself of children, that I've got 4 kids at school at the moment, and I think of the workload, the amount of just the day-to-day operational issues that impact parents, things like homework and life in itself and all of that stuff, that the burden on the family unit in terms of the support structure from a school's perspective, but also from just the supporting, because part of the ecosystem in a school is not just supporting a child, but it's supporting the school environment, supporting the teacher. It is that kind of, with all the multitudes of tech and technology, it's the homework component, it's, for example, exams, that I think just the day-to-day life of a child in comparison to, I take myself back almost 100 years ago when I was a child, that it just feels like it's a hell of a lot more complex for children to navigate now than it was when I was a child 100 years ago.
That's a very, I think it's a conversation we can have for more than an hour, certainly, because sometimes I think it may be the case. Certainly things like social media and the way that the world is going does make it more challenging for children in particular ways. But I do think that difficulties have been around for many years, right? Even in inverted commas, 100 years.
Well, I'm talking for myself. I'm not referring to anybody else. I know I was around when Vidivali was a thing. You know what I mean?
Okay. But even in that time, there were definitely things that existed. Like, people came from different type of social environments, right? And the background you come from is going to impact when you go into the classroom, what's happening in your mind. Are you emotionally stable? Or did you just come from a traumatic event at home? Or even the walk to school, being a very arduous walk, long distances.
Yeah, for some, also, yes.
Yeah, also impacts the amount of ability, energy, capacity you have to be learning when you get to school. So the point I'm trying to make is, it's a very important conversation to have now, but I do think these conversations have been needing to be happening for a very long time. And I have lots of empathy for parents, and I really do commend you for having 4 children in the education system, because one child is quite challenging in itself. 4 of them, I'm sure you have the biggest nuance about what you have to think about in terms of accommodating for their needs as much as possible.
As we wrap up, and I know obviously as the leader of a team, collaborations, partnerships are very important. So just maybe your thoughts also on organizations like yourself, Leeto, and Old Mutual coming together. There's Neuroverse and there's Nutripedes. All of these guys are coming together, babyyumyum.com, coming together to facilitate these conversations. I believe conversations are important, but I also believe in outcomes, and I believe that once we have a conversation, we need to have a path forward. What's the next steps? How are we going to be able to make sure that a lot of these learnings, insights filter their way through? So I just wanted to get your thought on collaboration, partnerships, facilitating these conversations, and then also this idea of action.
Okay, so I do think it's very important what you're saying, because I often do think about, okay, where to from here. The workshop and the conference on Saturday, I do think is basically an action-oriented workshop. And I say that because the companies and organizations that have come together are quite solution-driven. And therefore, when we spoke about what we'd like to discuss as experts on Saturday, it's also about giving parents the resources to be able to know when they're in the educational environment with people that they're supporting, what to be thinking about, and what to actually do in particular situations, right? So part of the conversation that I'm going to be having is exactly this, about like understanding what the policies are, where the gaps exist, and where the challenges are. Having said that, what a parent actually needs to be able to do to be able to tackle a difficulty that they come across in the classroom, with the teacher, and with the leadership as well. So that's from a parenting perspective. So the workshop is definitely addressing that. But having said that, moving forward, it's also about, which is what Leeto often does as well, is also about giving the resources to educators, to the leadership of educational environments, to the teachers there, the support staff, around knowing what neurodiversity is. Because the reality is teachers are trained to teach, right? And so there's other things that are coming to the classroom for them, in other words, learning barriers, learning about these learning barriers and knowing what to do when the situation comes about. So there are moments and there are organizations that we act in terms of tackling these particular challenges, but definitely agreed that much more work continues to be done and needs to be done. And listen, I mean, policy is a whole other conversation, but the starting point is at least the individual in front of you, the parents as well as the teachers.
That's amazing. Naledi, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. She's an educational psychologist. Oh, by the way, before we go, where can people get hold of you and the work that your organization does?
Okay, absolutely. So we are based in Sandton, Johannesburg, and it's Leeto Child Development Centre. So we are available. You can reach us online. So the website is Leeto. That's Leeto .Joburg, Joburg. So that's Leeto.Joburg. Otherwise, we're also available on WhatsApp or call quite easily. And that is, can I give the number online?
Yeah, happy to. Please do.
Okay. That's 069-434-8066. And that's us at Leeto Child Development Centre.
Naledi Mokoena, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And she, as she's eloquently stated, educational psychologist and lead psychologist at Leeto. You can go to their platform. She's also a researcher. She'll be speaking at the Neurodiversity Parenting Workshop that's hosted by babyyumyum.com in partnership with All Mutual, the Neuroverse, and Nutripedes, and that's happening on Saturday, the 13th of September at the Forum, the campus in Johannesburg. Go and check out babyyumyum.com for more information. And yeah, interesting conversations, topics that we all need to be involved in. So Naledi and the team, and she'll be a speaker there as well. And I think it's worth, just if you've got the time, if you're in the industry, if you want to find out more about neurodiversity and the role it plays in the classroom, definitely check out this conference. As I said, it's happening on Saturday at the Forum in the campus in Johannesburg. Okay, it's a wrap from us. We'll be back again tomorrow. We've got loads of guests, including the EU report. We'll have a chat to a bunch of individuals. We'll also find out what the Garage SA is up to. They've got an interesting workshop at the moment where they're empowering women around their car safety. So they're doing this massive campaign. That's going to be quite interesting. We're also going to have a chat to Kasifa Answer from Rethink Your Drink. As you know, it is Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Month, and we'll create awareness about that. We're also going to talk to the NCT theatre company about their play. There's just so much happening. We'll have our Wealth Zen expert, Shamain Subramani. She'll be in studios. It's going to be a crazy show tomorrow. Thank you very much. We always appreciate you joining us on this journey. It's all about positive stories.